welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie Noful, and if you're new here, I make impractical crafts and lifestyle content. And today I am making a crap ton of Halloween decorations. I'm making two which are inspired from Over the Garden Wall. I'm making another one from this Dollar Tree vintage hack that I saw, so we're gonna give my own try at that. Which, is it gonna turn out as good as the pictures that I saw? Probably not. I also have, we need to make something for a Halloween costume because it's almost Halloween. My child's throwing things in the kitchen, please hold. Costume, which I'm gonna have my husband do. So, like I said, a crap ton of Halloween stuff that we are doing today, and I'm bringing you along with me. So without any further ado, let me show you what I got for Enoch. Here it is. I got this foam pumpkin from an estate sale yesterday. It was $4. I don't know if you can tell, but it is pretty dusty because I think it sat in a garage for a while. So we need to clean it up and give it a good paint job and make it into Enoch. So that's one project. Then you have a toddler. Things like this happen. Yeah. So rip that foam pumpkin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the guy in Over the Garden Wall in Pottsville who's carving another pumpkin. See that? See the vision? Okay. Then, I also have, we got this cat doorbell from Dollar Tree. It was $3. We are going to make him vintagey. Those are the three projects that we will be focusing on, and we'll be checking in on my husband as he makes our Pokeballs for our costume this year. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you like and subscribe, and without further ado, we need to go to the store, Michael. Okay, I ended up changing because I remembered I have a toddler, and when we go to a store, I have to run after him. But we went and we got some ribbon. I got kind of like this sage green color and then a darker green, because if you look at photos of Enoch, he definitely has more green, like dark green than light green. So here's our pumpkin. Here's our ribbon. Like that. Gotta clean this guy up. So I'm going to get a wet paper towel and go ahead and wash it off. Let's discuss Enoch himself, the mayor of Pottsville. Also, I don't know what's up with my hair today. Please ignore. So if you look at any kind of image, or if you watch Over the Garden Wall, Enoch is actually a bag. He's not really a pumpkin because he's actually the cat, which I think kind of fits nicely with my cat theme. Anyways, he's actually a cat who's in a bag. So my kind of plan, but also my fear with this, is I was going to paint him orange. This is the same orange I used for my paper mache pumpkins, which turns out to be very, very orange. So I was thinking of muting it down a little bit with a little bit of black, and then going through and making almost like that, the layer, the strips, all the way around. My fear with that is that it's going to end up looking more like a basketball, if that makes sense. But I think that's what we're going to do, and I'm also going to paint the stem to look like the top of a bag as well. The stem we need to keep on because that's how we're going to hang it up outside. So I need to paint the entirety of the pumpkin before we can actually paint the face on. So today's a lot of like hurry up and wait. Hence and Owen are at the park right now, which is why I have a moment to actually do all of this stuff. And when he gets back, we will check in on him with the Pokeballs. Yeah, that'll work. I'm in like an awkward spot every time I film where I want to talk, but I don't want to not be in frame when I'm talking. So let me just rotate this. Oh, you know what I think I'm going to do? Do you see that? Do you see that? Sort of. I'm going to leave this color and then paint strips of the folk art, and then I'm going to go through and do the lines with the brown so you can kind of see the distinction. This is going up outside, So, most people will be seeing it from pretty far away, so I'm not that concerned about it looking perfect. Not that I'm much of a perfectionist anyways. Like that. And I'm just gonna do that a couple more times. All the way around. This section doesn't look as good as that other one. We're gonna let him dry. And meanwhile, let me show you my other stuff, kind of.
So with the Dollar Tree doorbell, what I did is I went in with some brown paint, and initially I was trying not to get the cracks to be full of brown paint, but that didn't end up working. So I went in with some black paint just to give some definition to those cracks. And what I was really going for here was very homemade, vintagey, because when I think of vintage Halloween, I think of a lot of homemade crafts. And so that's really what I was trying to embody with this. I know some people are very much perfectionist, but I'm really not, and I really was just going for that homemade 1940s vibe with this whole doorbell. So once I did that, I set it aside to dry so that I could work on my little guy who's carving his friend. So for this I had to get creative because I really don't have a whole lot of tools for foam smithing. And so I used a plastic straw that I think was originally my parents' just to make the indents for the eyes, because in all of Pottsville, there's only one pumpkin other than Enoch that isn't carved, and it kind of bothers me. But I wanted to make sure that they had the depth and were actually three-dimensional. When I was working on his nose, I actually messed up, so this became the guy who was being carved rather than the guy who was carving, because I ended up painting the nose on for the guy who's sitting in the chair just because I really didn't like how it came out. It was super messy and I couldn't get the correct shape because he was supposed to have kind of like an upside down heart. So that didn't really work out, but that's okay. We live and learn. So I went in with some acrylic just to fill in the eyes and the nose and the mouth. And once it was all dry, I went in and I added the yellow details around the outside, because if you carve a pumpkin, you'll see that the outside is orange and then the fleshy part on the inside is yellow, just to give it that depth and to make them look carved. And after that, I set them aside.
So here's the doorbell. I don't have it turned on. I painted this part brown. I filled in the cracks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to need to go through and I'm going to paint everything a base color except for the tongue and the teeth. This all needs to be black so that I can go in and add in the vintage details, kind of like the ornate vintage cats. Like if you saw the viral Walmart cat this year, kind of like that.
So I did in fact go through with some black, and I covered the green of the eyes so that I could go in and put the vintage triangle eyes over. And this was honestly a lot of fun. I think just painting the whole thing black was really satisfying because it only took one coat. And watching this video now, it's super satisfying to watch. So I hope you enjoy this part as much as I did. Now I don't actually have any gray paint, so I went through and I made some, and I added the outlines on Enoch around the different colored strips just to give it a little more definition and depth, because as I've stated before, he is a bag, and this honestly took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, and my lines are not fantastic, but this is going to be up high. We're on the second level of our apartment complex, so I don't think anyone's going to be able to see it really all that close, and if they have something to say about it, or if you, my viewer, has something to say about it, I apologize. Once that was dry, I went through and I was really working hard to freehand this time. Normally I have Hens draw everything for me so I can paint over it, but this time I really wanted this to be 100% mine. So I freehanded the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and honestly I think it turned out pretty okay. Once his mouth was dry, I was able to go through and add some gray and white for his teeth and added the lines. And then I just set him out so he could dry. Once his eyes were dry, I went through and I added his pupils, and I honestly ended up finger painting this. I know that it sounds really childlike and like you're in kindergarten, but I happen to love finger painting. And I also think with things like this, I'm much better at controlling my finger than an actual brush. So once that was done, he was looking like himself and I was able to move on. With the doorbell, I decided I really wanted to diffuse that Dollar Tree red, so I used a folk out red that I have, and even though it's still red, it really made it look a little more pale, which I ended up liking a lot better than that red plastic that was originally on the cat. And with that, let's check in on Hens and see how he's doing with the Pokeballs.
So the thought process here was to paint on the black strip and like the circle button that goes on a Pokeball. Hindsight being 2020, I realized I probably should have done this step last, but the goal was to do it first so that way I could just paint the red and white over it and have it just even out on its own.
Welcome back. So then I really got to have a lot of fun and paint the cat. So I started with the mouth where I painted the inside yellow, and I used the same yellow to fill in the entirety of the eyes because I wanted to have a common background color, and I thought this yellow looked really nice. All my colors I try to keep on the ventured side anyways, just because most of my projects end up leaning that direction, and so the color scheme that I have going is kind of the same colors that I always use for all of my projects, which I'm not sponsored or anything, but Folk Art, if you ever want to sponsor me, hit me up. But yeah, I just filled in the cat's eyes and mouth, and this ended up being a lot of really thin layers, so I would spend quite a bit of time between each layer just to make sure it was drying all the way and not clumping. Then, using that same red that I used for the tongue, I drew him a little nose, and I also outlined his mouth, and I gave him some ears. Something I personally struggle with a lot is when I'm creative, I tend to just copy paste whatever I see. So this was actually pretty difficult for me to try to design it myself, but I actually was pretty proud of this part. And then after this came the fun part of getting to add in all the outlines. And really what I was thinking of was those cat clocks. And I ended up adding these lines right here that you can see. And I ended up covering these with some black paint later. Then I went through and I gave him some pupils with some brown, and I ended up adding some brown in between the white lines on his whiskers and in his ears just to try to give him a little bit more depth. And I need to go back through and fix his forehead, but that's not too bad, and you'll see that in a little bit.
Alright, welcome back to day 2. Here's our Enoch. He's completely dry, and it is time to give him his body. Now, as some of you know, or maybe don't, I was a dancer for a very long time, and specifically I did ballet for a very long time. And when we would put the ribbons on our point shoes, there is a hack that we would do that I'm going to use right now. You have your ribbon, right? And it melts the end so that it won't fray. Now, I do have a bowl of water in front of me, just in case this goes horribly wrong, because I was imagining this in my head earlier, and I was imagining like something horrific happening, so now we just need to figure out how long we want our ribbon. So I'm thinking it's right here maybe? Yeah, so let me just cut that. Like so.
Once I had all the ribbons cut, I Mod Podged over Enoch because I have learned the hard way that if you don't Mod Podge, things will completely fall apart, as we learned from our mushroom hats. And you can watch that video. I think it is probably linked in my description, and if I totally forgot, then sorry. But then I had to sit him aside to dry. Once he was dry, I Mod Podged the bottom, and while it was somewhat tacky, I started putting the ribbons in an every other pattern just to help keep them in place. And once I had them where I wanted them, I went ahead and I nailed them. I used these itty bitty little nails, and I just used the back of a screwdriver, which honestly I think I probably could have just pushed them in by hand, but having the screwdriver I think made it look a little more aesthetic, because just have a look at this. And that leads us to day 3. day 3, I went through and I added in some more white details onto my cat, right in between his 2 eyebrows, and I actually added some more lines to his eyebrows just to give him more of that vintage ruffled cat look. And I added some lines on his forehead as well, just to give him a little more depth, and I set him aside to dry. As I'm sure you might be able to tell, I'm getting very good at making sure I seal everything I do, so I went through with a layer of Mod Podge just to make sure that all of the paint that I painted would stay there. Meanwhile, Hence with his beautiful handwriting went through and wrote what a wonderful harvest for me for my Enoch. And I'm not super sure if this was the best idea, but I took a little bit of hairspray just to try to seal the chalk marker onto the chalkboard itself. I drilled a hole through Enoch's stem. I didn't end up painting it like a bag, so that's a little disappointing, but honestly, I was more focused on just trying to get everything done this week. And I used some twine to string through so that we could hang them up outside. Hence attached the chalkboard to Enoch for me, and with that, he was all done.
So here I was just painting in the bottom black part, and I basically just painted around so that way it would make a slight curve for that center black ball.
Don't worry, I didn't forget about this little guy, so I hot glued his head to his body, and that's kind of where he sat until I was able to run to Joann's and get some hay for him. But while I was there, I did discover the miniature section. So be prepared, my dear viewers, because I will be an unstoppable miniatures goddess.
So now I'm just basically getting a small dab of the paint so I can paint that little center button so that once it's dried, I can go through and Mod Podge it.
Once I had the hay and everything, I was ready to put together my little guy. So with his head on, I decided I wanted to have him looking towards you instead of down at the head that he was making. And I'm actually like 90% sure you're not supposed to do this, so if you're going to do this yourself, I do not recommend using hot glue because it was straight up like making this popping sound and kind of letting off a little bit of smoke. So I think I'm pretty lucky that I didn't burn down our apartment. But I just hot glued all of this. I'm not someone who really likes hot glue. I don't enjoy using it a whole lot, so the fact that I had to use it for this was a little bit annoying. I always end up burning myself, and it's painful. For his arms and legs, I actually took some of the hay that was on the floor at the pumpkin patch that we were at, as you can see in between the different recordings for the days. That was at a pumpkin patch that we went to, and I ended up grabbing some of the hay that was on the floor around us just because I thought it would be just about the right length for my little guy's arms and legs, and I was correct. And I absolutely stuck my thumb into this hot glue, and it really hurt. You can see it on my thumb, but turns out hay is kind of difficult to work with. I've never worked with hay before, and so gluing it all together to get the look I wanted to achieve was kind of difficult. I ended up constructing him the way you would a snowman, or the way I imagine constructing a snowman would go, since we live in Arizona and I've never really made one that's bigger than like 2 inches tall. Like, this guy is actually the size of every snowman I've ever made in my life. But once he was all together, I ended up once again gluing the hay directly to the hay and making it crackle and pop, so don't do that. But this miniature kit that I got, I ended up using the saw from it to have him cutting the mouth, and I just stuck it straight into the foam since the foam is really soft. And with that takes us to the reveal. Here they are! And the cat doorbell that's over there, but I think they turned out pretty good. This guy did not turn out as good as I was hoping he would. He's a little scary.
But Enoch turned out really good. He's like the same height as my child. So some things that I think went well is I think Enoch turned out really good. I like the doorbell. Did not turn out as good as the inspiration photos, just kind of like how I thought it was going to not. Little carving guy, a little bit scary, but that's okay. We all are a little scary in our own ways. What do you think? Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will be seeing you in my next video. Toodles! That was so cute.